What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Justin. Thank you for stopping by and hanging out with me today to talk about a handful of films that I've recently seen at the 11th annual Panic Fest, the horror film fest based in Kansas City, right where I live. It's one of the biggest horror film festivals in the country, and it's a destination for upcoming films. Some films aren't even completed yet. There are a lot of independent films that may have not found distribution. Some are coming very soon, but either way, I've had the opportunity to watch more films in a small amount of time than I ever have before. I've already watched about 10 films just in the past week. Group of films that I've managed to see are eclectic, so many different genres. There's documentaries, there's shorts, there's animated films. There's a crazy amount of really cool films that will be coming your way very soon. One of the highlights, Bury the Bride. I've already dropped a review for that, starring Scout Taylor Compton, directed by Spider One. That movie was really, really cool. I did a standalone review for that. Also, me and my buddy Garrett from Born to Be Rad and our Rad Pack podcast, we dropped our joint review for Evil Dead Rise, which we were lucky to see a week early. That movie kicks ass. That movie will be releasing later this week. But today I wanted to highlight just a handful of films that I think you guys definitely should keep your eye out for, because they were some of the standouts of this film fest. Now, I still have the rest of this whole week and the upcoming weekend to see a bunch more films. There's a bunch more on the slate that I'll be talking about as well, but I hand-selected 4 films that I think you guys need to look out for. Now, each of these films may have different audiences, but I think out of this bunch, there's definitely going to be a film or two that you're going to be interested in, especially those who like pretty brutal, hardcore horror films. So let's go ahead and dive into 4 recommendations from Panic Fest this year that I think you guys need to check out. So guys, for these 4 films that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to do it in somewhat of an order of the level of recommendation that I'm going to be talking about. Not to say that this number 4 film isn't one that I recommend. It's just going to have the smallest audience that I think will really appreciate it. This is very niche. It's one of the more experimental films that I saw at Panic Fest, but there is an audience for this one, and I know some of you guys will really dig shit like this. So this is called The Once and Future Smash.
In 1970, at the height of the football revenge film craze, Mikey Smash and William Mouth both portrayed the football cannibal Smash Mouth in the cult hit End Zone 2. The film's influence on a small number of horror legends was immeasurable. After a portion of the film was lost and the ownership rights were called into question, End Zone 2 simply disappeared. With the pending casting announcement at Mad Monster Party, rivals Mikey and William will each do anything to reclaim their iconic role.
The whole setup for this movie, you need a little bit of background here. So The Once and Future Smash is a mockumentary, a fake documentary about some fictional films that supposedly came out in 1965 and 1970. These films are called End Zone and End Zone 2. The Once and Future Smash follows 2 actors played by Michael St. Michaels and Bill Weeden. These two, supposedly in the late 60s, early 70s, portrayed the villain of a couple of fictional movies called End Zone and End Zone 2. Now, the filmmakers went so far as to create fake IMDb pages for these. You can go online and you can find stats and credits for End Zone and End Zone 2, but these films don't really exist. They exist only for the sole purpose of being the basis of this crazy mockumentary that, for the most part, takes place at Mad Monster Convention. I think what they did was super ambitious, really creative, and I think there's going to be a good audience for this one for people who are really in the thick of horror culture, convention culture. This is for the people who know all the writers and directors and producer of all those classic movies in the 80s. Michael St. Michaels claims that he is the real Smash Mouth, while Bill Weeden said that he portrayed Smash Mouth, but only in the last half of the movie, which doesn't really exist. There is so much lore that they created, it would be too much to go into here, but the lengths that they did to create a backstory for End Zone 1 and End Zone 2, including shooting a 60-minute End Zone 2 film. Now, the lore of this film that is that the last reel, the final 30 minutes of End Zone 2 has been lost forever, and they have painstakingly restored the reels for End Zone, and they have all these amazing talking heads from Adam Marcus, Victor Miller, Lloyd Kaufman, even Sean Clark makes an appearance. They do everything they can to make it seem that they are legitimately following these two actors for a End Zone reunion at Mad Monster Convention. This sounds really complicated and it's kind of hard to explain, but if you buy into the lore that this End Zone and End Zone 2 really existed and all of this crazy behind the scenes drama took place, and you get some really interesting performances. Some of you might know Michael St. Michaels as the star of The Greasy Strangler, and this movie is definitely going to be directed to kind of that audience. If you're into the Nightmare Sisters type of movies or Poultrygeist, really silly shit, you're going to buy into the world that these two directors, Sevilla Cacciola and Michael Epstein, it's a husband and wife filmmaking duo. They did a really good job at creating more backstory than this thing really needed, but you kind of needed all this background to make this faux documentary work, and that is Once and Future Smash. This is going to be for the hardcore nerds, the people who know all the people at the conventions, who know every credit of every movie they ever watched in the 80s. If that's you, you will enjoy the Once and Future Smash.
Oh, what the hell? Why would you need to run into me?
I want to show you something. There's the sign.
Yeah?
Where's the trail?
This doesn't make any sense.
So the next one we're going to be talking about is this mind-bending psychological thriller horror backwoods indie film called Brightwood. This is directed by Dane Elkar. The very brief description on IMDb reads, a couple find themselves trapped while on a run around a pond. Now this is loosely based on Dane Elkar's short film from 2018 called The Pond. So guys, if any of you have seen movies like Coherence or Triangle or The Endless or even something like Blair Witch Project, where people are trapped in a situation, they seem to be running in circles, time doesn't seem right, space doesn't seem right, and people seem to be caught in these weird loops and they're trapped inside of their location and they can't get out. That's the case for the two characters in this movie. There's only two people in this entire movie, two actors. They go on a run, they kind of have a troubled relationship. You could tell they have a very strained relationship. They don't even seem to like each other too much anymore, and they're going on this hike through the woods and they start to realize that they're seeing the same things. They keep on going long distances on their run, but they keep on coming back to the same place, this little spot by a pond. There's this little no swimming sign, and they keep seeing the same shit, and they can't get out of this endless loop. Now, we've seen movies that are somewhat similar to this, but what Dane was able to capture with just such a small cast, such a simple story, what is obviously a very low budget, they basically went out to the woods, two actors and a camera and a couple cell phones, and made a quite thrilling original sci-fi drama thriller movie that has a pretty cool conclusion. I think for a director to be able to pull off concepts like this, it's a pretty high concept movie when you don't have anything but a bare location and dialogue. It takes a lot to, first of all, convey your story, convey these sci-fi elements and make them make sense. It's not an easy thing to do. And also for this, you get a little bit of kind of some gore and horror elements that kind of push this towards the horror genre, but it's not enough gore or weird backwoods shit to turn off a casual like horror thriller fan. I think this could be pretty good for a general audience. This may be a little slow, a little rough around the edges, and maybe slightly low budget for some people who are used to super polished productions, but I think people who are into independent cinema and who like these small, like just these small productions with just a couple characters with an interesting sci-fi twist, I think you guys are really going to like this one. I watched this virtually on the Panic Fest virtual option, and I had a really great time with it. And it's not a 100% perfect film. I imagine there's the world where this was an episode in an anthology series or something like that, or where it's a long form short that runs about 45 to 50 minutes. They do stretch this concept out to I think an hour and 20 minutes. So at times it does seem slightly repetitive and maybe a bit bit overlong, but it pretty much worked for me as a full-length feature film, and I got a lot out of it. Like I said, if you're into movies like Triangle, Justin Benson's and his partner's The Endless, I think you're gonna dig these type of things. I love these type of movies that kind of play with your mind and fuck with you kind of at the same time the movie fucks with these characters as they slowly lose their mind. There's a whole aspect to this movie that I did not talk about that makes this movie more unique than these other films. So I think if you were into those type of films, I think Brightwood is going to be good for you. I'm not quite sure of the distribution of this. I imagine it'll be coming to streaming somewhere soon. So keep an eye out for Dane Elkar's Brightwood. So guys, now we're getting into the real nitty gritty, the real dirty, grimy shit from Panic Fest that I saw. Now this movie will absolutely pummel your face in the dirt, which is exactly what they do to our main character in our next movie, Beaten to Death. A desperate choice leads Jack down a path that leaves him beaten and bruised as he struggles against man, nature, and his own sanity. This comes from Australian director Sam Curtin, whose previous films, The Slaughterhouse Killer and Blood Hunt, from what I gather, I watched the trailer for those, and it seems that his aesthetic is to just get in the grimy, dirty, dusty outback of Australia and basically just torture his characters for about 90 minutes, which is what happens in the movie Beaten to Death. Now, I don't want to go too far into the plot and what actually puts forth the events of this movie, because most of the plot, most of the story, all of the reveals come in flashbacks throughout the film. So basically you get our main character, Jack, who wakes up. We're thrown right into the thick of this fucked up situation where he is being beaten and strangled by this giant guy. His girlfriend is severely injured in the corner of the room, and he has no idea really what had happened to him or why, or at least the audience doesn't know why this is happening. Why is this guy beating this guy to death and leaving him for dead? We don't really know. So after this cold open, he goes to this house to try to find help, and that sets in motion the rest of the movie. Now, there is a lot of really cool twists and turns, but this movie pummels you. It is relentless. It is bleak. It is crazy. It is gory. It is absolutely brutal, and it's shot in this really interesting way. Like, the cinematography has this, almost turns the footage into what looks like a dusty negative. It's still in color, but I don't know what they do. If they scooped certain aspects of the color, and it just looks really bizarre. It kind of reminds me of the filters on Instagram from like 2010, kind of with a high shutter frame rate, so everything's really jolty and weird. But this movie is kind of hard to watch. I didn't really know what I was getting into watching this. With the movie with a title like Beaten to Death, you know it's going to be brutal, but god damn, does this actor go through some shit. And not only does Jack as a character go through all of these insane, relentless beatings and torture, I can't imagine how hard it was for this actor, because he basically has an appliance, a makeup on his eyes that makes him completely blind as a performer. So I can't imagine how miserable this movie was to shoot in the hot outback of Australia with this heavy makeup appliance that made it impossible to even see in front of him. This guy deserves a lot of credit just for the performance that he puts in. But this movie, again, is not going to be for everybody because it is so relentlessly bleak and challenging for the viewer to get through this. It's really brutal, guys. If you guys have seen the movie Revenge, this movie is a good companion piece, and it kind of gives you an idea as to the look and feel like this. It kind of reminded me of the really grimy early 2000s revenge flicks that we were getting back in the day. The aesthetics of like the Hills Have Eyes remake or I Spit on Your Grave. Now, there isn't any sexual violence or R-word stuff in this, but it definitely has the same I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left brutality. So if that type of ultra super violence is not your bag, you're not gonna dig this. But if you dig that Platinum Dunes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe, and you wanna see a guy just be relentlessly beaten and tortured for an hour and a half, you may like this one. Yeah, you may like this one. So that is Beaten to Death, coming soon. Now guys, you guys heard me talk about Bury the Bride being the #1 highlight of the entire film festival. If there was any film so far that could knock that out of the top spot, it's our next film, Laced.
What did you do?
In an unprecedented snowstorm, a wife's plan to kill her abusive husband begins to unravel. So guys, I can't stress enough how much I enjoyed this film. It has been a very, very long time since I felt this sort of Hitchcockian, unbearable suspense in a movie. This movie is like take the basement scene of Inglourious Bastards or the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards, or take the suspense levels of Uncut Gems or really early M. Night Shyamalan. This is a true throwback to like the suspense stuff of the 60s and 70s, and even that wave of suspense that we got in the 90s with all of these really cool low-key thrillers. This movie takes place all in one location, okay? You have a wife who is unhappy in her marriage, and her plans to poison and murder her husband, they keep on getting foiled by people arriving to the house, or things not going as planned, or things happening that she just simply did not plan for. And the way this movie plays out is so brilliantly executed. The performances across the board are awesome. The camera work, being that you're all in one location, you have to really, as a director and as a cinematographer, make the best out of a single location film. You have to make this one room interesting. You have to show different areas at different times. You don't want to reveal the whole space. It already feels like a claustrophobic because of the nature of it being one room and just such a small amount of characters, but it does take some finesse. You have to pick the right time to do a close-up or a wide shot or a camera movement, and every camera movement, every line, all the performances are done so exquisitely in this movie that it's been a long time since I felt this type of suspense. The film was directed by and stars Kyle Butenhoff. There's only four main actors in this entire film. You have Kyle Butenhoff, who plays the husband. You have Hermione Lynch, who plays another side character that I don't want to spoil. And then you have Dana Macken, who plays the lead. The movie really hinges on her performance, and she's fantastic in this movie. I think we're gonna see a lot from all of the filmmakers involved. This filmmaker right here, I guarantee you this guy is gonna be a big deal. The way he helmed this movie, used a small budget, single location to create this murder thriller, is just so impressive. These are the kinds of hidden gems you look for when you're just blind watching a movie, or you're trying to find new and upcoming films, filmmakers that are making their way. These are the type of exciting films and filmmakers that make discovering new cinema worthwhile, and what make film fests like Panic Fest so special and so important. If it weren't for Panic Fest, I don't know if I would have heard of this movie or these other films. So I really wanted to shine a light on these movies. The Once and Future Smash, Brightwood, Beaten to Death, Laced. These are all incredible upcoming films that you guys are definitely going to want to watch. Do not miss these, especially Laced. All these movies are great, but Laced is one I feel is going to pop. I could almost see this one having a small theatrical run and doing really well, or being picked up by Shudder, or even a streaming service like, I don't know, Paramount Plus or something like this. With the right push, this movie could really make a splash. So guys, that is 4 highlights from Panic Fest. And like I said, I'm gonna be seeing more movies throughout the week. I'm going to do another one of these recap videos. I'm also going to do a story time video about me meeting Barbara Crampton and Scout Taylor Compton. It's kind of a funny little story, and I wanna try to get as much stuff as I can to make people aware of Panic Fest and how cool it is. It's a very unique film fest that I'm so lucky that I'm so close to. So guys, that is it. Drop your comments down below if you have seen any of these movies. Let me know in the comments below. Which one are you most excited about checking out? And guys, I think we're done here. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.